When my husband told me not to look under the bed that night, I thought he was joking. We'd been married for 5 years, and teasing each other was just part of our routine. But the way he said it that evening, his voice low, steady, and almost trembling, made me stop laughing. He stood in the doorway of our bedroom, pale and tense, and said it again. "Claire, I mean it. Whatever you do, don't look under the bed tonight." At first I smiled and rolled my eyes. "What are you talking about, Mark? Did you hide something under there? A late anniversary gift?" But he didn't answer. He just kept staring, his eyes flicking toward the floor like he was listening for something I couldn't hear. That's when the uneasiness settled in my chest. I didn't know it yet, but that night would change everything I thought I knew about my husband, and about what can hide inside your home. If you're watching this, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. You'll want to stay till the end, because what I found under that bed is something I'll never forget. It had started as an ordinary Friday. The house was calm, the rain had just started tapping against the windows, and I'd lit a candle on the nightstand that smelled like cinnamon and cedar. Mark and I lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland, Oregon, where the loudest thing at night was usually the sound of passing cars or the hum of our refrigerator. We'd both been busy lately, Mark working late on his carpentry projects in the basement, and me bringing home paperwork from the school where I counseled students. We hadn't had much time together that week, so I cooked his favorite meal, baked chicken with rosemary potatoes, and tried to make it a normal night again. But Mark wasn't himself. He barely ate. His hands shook slightly when he reached for his water. I asked if he was okay, and he said he was just tired from work. Still, something in his eyes told me he was lying. After dinner, I washed the dishes while he went down to the basement. I heard him pacing, moving furniture around, muttering under his breath like he was measuring something. When I called down to ask what he was doing, he said, "Just finishing something important. Go ahead to bed. I'll be up soon." It was almost midnight when he came upstairs. I was sitting in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard his footsteps in the hallway. He stopped at the doorway, his face half hidden in the shadows. "Claire," he said quietly, "promise me something." I looked up, surprised by how serious he sounded. "What?" "Whatever you do," he said, "don't look under the bed tonight." I laughed softly. "Is this one of your weird jokes? Because it's not funny." "I'm not joking." His tone made me freeze. There was no humor, no warmth, just quiet fear. He crossed the room, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Please, just trust me." Then he went into the bathroom, leaving me alone with the candle flickering beside me. When he came back, I noticed he kept glancing at the floor. At one point, he crouched down to look beneath the bed skirt, but stopped himself, like he was afraid of what he might see. "What's wrong with you tonight?" I asked, half laughing, half nervous. "Nothing," he said, climbing into bed. "Just lock the door. I'll feel better." I did as he asked, even though it felt strange. I turned off the light and lay beside him, staring at the ceiling while the rain outside grew heavier. The rhythm of it usually soothed me, but that night, it only made me feel more aware of the silence inside our room. When I finally started to drift off, I heard Mark's voice again, soft, close to my ear. "Claire?" "Yeah?" I whispered. He didn't respond. I turned slightly and saw him sleeping beside me, breathing slow and even. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was just tired. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and tried to calm down, but deep inside something felt off, like the air under the bed wasn't still anymore, like something else was breathing in that dark space we never thought to check. That was the first time in my life I felt real fear in my own home, because sometimes the people we trust to protect us are the ones who know what's really hiding in the dark. I couldn't fall asleep after that. Every sound in the house felt louder than usual. The soft drip of rain from the gutter, the faint creak of the wooden floor, the slow tick of the clock on the wall. I told myself it was just my imagination, that Mark's strange warning had gotten under my skin. Still, something about his tone when he said those words kept replaying in my head. "Whatever you do, don't look under the bed tonight." Why would he say that? Mark was still asleep beside me, or at least I thought he was. His breathing was steady, slow, the same way it always was when he drifted into deep sleep. I reached over to touch his arm, just to make sure. warm, real. I let out a small breath and turned toward the window. The candle had burned down to a stub, and the rain had softened into a mist. I almost convinced myself everything was fine. Almost. Then, from somewhere downstairs, I heard the front door creak. It was soft, but clear enough to jolt me upright. My heart jumped. I looked toward the bedroom door. Nothing. I waited for a second sound. Footsteps, maybe, or a closing door. But the house was still. Maybe the wind pushed it open. I told myself that as I got out of bed and quietly stepped into the hallway. The lights from outside barely reached the stairs, but I could make out the outline of the living room below. The front door was shut. I exhaled and turned to go back when I heard something else. A faint noise from the kitchen, a slow scraping sound, like wood dragging against tile. I froze. "Mark?" I whispered. No answer. I called again, louder this time. "Mark, are you down there?" From the darkness below, I heard his voice. Calm, tired. "Yeah, I'm just finishing something. Go back to bed." I sighed with relief. It was just him. I almost laughed at how nervous I'd been. But then I remembered something. I'd left Mark asleep upstairs. I had touched him minutes ago. My chest tightened. Slowly, I turned back toward the bedroom. The bed was just as I'd left it, sheets slightly rumpled. Mark was still lying there, his face turned away from me. I whispered his name again, barely loud enough to wake him. "Mark?" He groaned softly, opening his eyes. "What's wrong?" I stared at him. "You said you were in the kitchen." He blinked, confused. "No, I wasn't. I've been here the whole time." Before I could respond, we both heard it. Footsteps moving across the living room floor. The sound was unmistakable, heavy, slow, measured. We looked at each other, neither of us speaking. Mark sat up, his eyes sharp now, all traces of sleep gone. He reached for his phone on the nightstand, but before he could unlock it, the footsteps stopped. We listened. Nothing. Then a voice floated up the stairs. His voice. "Claire?" It was calm, exactly like Mark's, but it came from the bottom of the staircase. Mark's eyes widened. He mouthed silently, "Don't answer." The voice came again, closer this time. "Claire, are you awake?" It was identical. The same tone, the same rhythm, like a perfect copy of his speech. I felt my body lock in place. Mark whispered, "Stay quiet." He slid out of bed, barefoot, and moved toward the door. When he peeked into the hallway, the light flickered once, faintly. "There's no one there," he whispered. "Stay put." He took one cautious step out, but before he could reach the top of the stairs, the bedroom floor groaned behind me. I turned around, heart pounding. The sound hadn't come from the hallway. It had come from under the bed. I froze. Mark turned back. "What was that?" I didn't answer. My hand trembled as I pointed toward the floor. Something shifted beneath the bed, slow, deliberate, like a body adjusting its position. Mark moved closer, his face pale. "Claire, don't move," he said quietly. He crouched down just enough to look, but the shadows were too dark to see anything. He reached for his phone, flicked on the flashlight, and that's when we both heard it. A whisper, so faint it almost blended with the sound of the rain. "Claire." My blood went cold. The voice came from beneath the bed. I stepped back, shaking. "Mark." He looked up at me, eyes wide. "Stay behind me." The voice spoke again, the same voice, Mark's voice. "Claire, please don't say anything. Just look at me." I gasped and turned to the real Mark, standing right in front of me, his face drained of color. "Whoever's up there," the voice said again, lower this time. "That's not me." The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. Mark backed away slowly, grabbing my hand. We stood frozen, staring at the space between the bed and the floor, where the whisper had come from. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The shadows seemed to stretch further, as if something under there was shifting closer to the edge. Mark's voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Claire, get out of the room." I took one step toward the door. Then another sound broke the silence. A low, rasping exhale that didn't belong to either of us. It was breathing, slow, deliberate, and inches from where we stood. That's when I realized it wasn't just copying Mark's voice. It was breathing in sync with us. waiting for one of us to move first. The breathing under the bed grew louder, deep, slow, and steady. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic, like it was trying to mimic us. Mark's grip on my hand tightened. The only light in the room came from the faint glow of the hallway and his phone flashlight, trembling slightly in his hand. I could see the reflection of his fear in the mirror across the room. He looked like a man torn between reason and horror, trying to protect me while not believing what he was seeing. "Claire," he whispered, "we're going to walk out slowly. Don't look down, no matter what you hear." I nodded, my whole body trembling. We started moving backward, inch by inch toward the door. My bare feet brushed against the cold wooden floor, and I could feel every heartbeat in my chest like a drum. Then came the sound, a scrape against the floorboards, like fingernails dragging. Whatever was under there was moving closer. I wanted to scream, but Mark squeezed my hand harder. "Don't," he mouthed. We reached the doorway. For a moment I thought we were safe, but then the voice came again. Soft, pleading, familiar. "Claire, please don't go." It sounded exactly like Mark. The same tone, the same rhythm. My stomach turned. The real Mark froze. His hand fell from mine. He stared at the bed, eyes wide with disbelief. "That's my voice," he whispered. The thing under the bed laughed, a low, shaky sound that didn't belong to any human. My knees almost gave out. Mark stepped forward, against every instinct, his protective nature overtaking his fear. "Who's there?" he demanded. Silence. Then, slowly, a shadow shifted beneath the bed frame. I saw the edge of a hand, pale, thin, shaking slightly, but it wasn't quite right. The fingers bent at odd angles, too long, too sharp. It slid back into the darkness. Mark turned to me. "Go downstairs. Now." I shook my head, but he shouted, "Go." His voice was sharp enough to break my trance. I ran into the hallway, clutching my phone. The stairs felt longer than ever. My feet slipped on the wood, and I caught myself on the railing. Behind me, I heard Mark yelling something, but I couldn't make out the words. His voice was mixed with another, his own voice, duplicated, overlapping, echoing through the walls. When I reached the bottom, I grabbed the phone on the counter and dialed 911, my hands shaking so hard I could barely press the buttons. "Please," I said when the dispatcher answered. "There's someone in my house. My husband's upstairs. There's something under our bed." The dispatcher tried to calm me down, asking for the address, asking if the intruder was armed. But how could I explain it? How could I say that the thing in our room was pretending to be my husband, whispering his words like it had borrowed his voice? As I was giving the address, I heard a thud from upstairs, then another, then a crash that shook the ceiling. I dropped the phone and screamed his name. "Mark!" No answer. I ran halfway up the stairs but stopped when I heard movement above me. Slow, dragging footsteps approached the top of the staircase. My heart pounded so hard it felt like the walls could hear it. I looked up and saw him. Mark stood there in the dark, his head tilted slightly, his face hidden in the shadows. His voice was soft. "Claire, it's okay now. Come back to bed." For a second, I almost did. But something about the way he said it, too calm, too flat, made me step back. His tone lacked the warmth I'd known for years. It was hollow, rehearsed, like someone trying to remember how to sound human. Then I heard it. From the bedroom behind him, another voice. The same voice. "Claire, don't. It's not me." My stomach turned to ice. There were two Marks. One in the doorway, one still inside the room. The one at the top of the stairs started walking down, slow and deliberate. I could finally see his face in the faint light, pale, eyes wide open but empty. The skin around his mouth twitched, like it was struggling to move naturally. I stumbled backward, gripping the banister. "Stay away from me!" I screamed. He stopped halfway down. The other Mark, the real one, I think, shouted from behind him. "Run, Claire!" The thing on the stairs twisted its head toward the sound, a strange crack echoing through the hallway. Then it smiled. Not a real smile, but a stretched, unnatural grin that didn't reach its eyes. I bolted down the last few steps and grabbed the front door handle, but it wouldn't open. The lock turned, but the door felt stuck, like something was pressing against it from the outside. My hands slipped as I fought with it. Behind me, the footsteps grew faster. I screamed again, slamming my shoulder into the door until it finally gave way. Cold night air hit my face as I ran barefoot into the yard. I didn't stop running until I reached the streetlights at the corner, my lungs burning, my legs shaking so violently I could barely stand. When the police arrived minutes later, the house was silent. They searched every room, every corner, every crawl space, but there was nothing under the bed, nothing in the hall, nothing that explained the scratches on the floorboards or the blood smear near the nightstand. When they brought Mark out, he was shaken, but alive. He told them he'd been pinned down by something he couldn't see, something whispering in his voice while it held him. The officers said they found no signs of an intruder, but when one of them lifted the bed skirt, he paled. Underneath, carved into the wood, were words written shakily with something sharp. "I'm not done yet." That was the moment I realized the nightmare hadn't ended. It had only moved somewhere else. When the officers left that night, the house didn't feel like ours anymore. Even after they searched every corner, their flashlights cutting through every shadow, the air still felt wrong, thick and heavy, as if something was still hiding there, waiting. I couldn't go back upstairs, not after what had happened. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, while Mark stood by the window, arms crossed, staring into the backyard. Neither of us spoke for a long time. It was nearly 4 a.m. when one of the officers returned from checking the basement. "There's nothing down there," he said, shaking his head. "No signs of a break-in, just some old tools, a few boxes, and sawdust." Mark nodded, his face pale. "That's where I work most nights," he said. "Everything was normal earlier today." The officer sighed, clearly tired and trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. "Sometimes," he said gently, "when we're exhausted, we can hear or see things that aren't really there. But I knew what I'd heard. I knew what I'd seen. There was no mistaking that voice, the voice that sounded exactly like my husband calling my name from underneath the bed, and the way the air had gone cold, the way the shadows had shifted, the way something had grabbed Mark and whispered in his tone. It wasn't exhaustion. It was something else, something that wanted to be us. When the police finally left, dawn was beginning to break. The rain had stopped, and the sky was painted with faint streaks of blue and gold. It should have felt peaceful, but it didn't. Mark sat down beside me, his eyes empty. He looked like he hadn't taken a full breath in hours. "I swear I felt it," he said quietly. "It was under there with me. It pulled me down." His voice cracked. I could feel its hands. I touched his arm gently. "You don't have to talk about it now." But he kept going, his voice trembling. It wasn't just grabbing me. It was copying me. Every sound I made, it repeated but half a second later, like it was trying to learn how to be me. A chill ran through me. "How long do you think it was here?" He looked at me, then at the ceiling, his eyes unfocused. "I think it's been here for weeks. I've been hearing things in the basement, footsteps, whispers, but every time I checked, there was nothing. I didn't want to scare you." I swallowed hard, the pieces falling together, the long nights in the basement, the strange exhaustion, the moments he'd seemed distracted or distant. What if it hadn't always been him coming upstairs afterward? What if it had already been practicing? The realization made my stomach twist. I stood up quickly, pacing the living room. "We need to leave," I said. "Right now. We can stay with my sister until we figure this out." Mark nodded, but his hands were shaking. He went upstairs to grab our things while I waited by the door, still trembling. Every creak of the floor made my chest tighten. I kept glancing toward the stairs, waiting to see him come back down. But he didn't. Minutes passed. Then I heard footsteps above me. Slow, heavy, deliberate, the sound of a drawer opening, then closing. I called up, "Mark, are you okay?" No answer. "Mark?" Still nothing. Then his voice came from the top of the stairs. "I'm fine. Just packing up." The words were right, but the tone wasn't. It was too calm, too flat. The way someone sounds when they're pretending to remember how to sound human. My skin prickled. I grabbed my phone and texted him instead. "You okay?" A buzz came from the coffee table. His phone lit up next to me. He'd left it downstairs. I froze. The person upstairs wasn't my husband. The footsteps started again. Slow, unhurried. Each one made the floor groan. I backed toward the door, my hands fumbling with the lock. The last time I'd seen the real Mark, he'd gone upstairs wearing a dark green hoodie. When the figure appeared at the top of the stairs, it was wearing the same one. But its posture was wrong. The shoulders were too stiff, the head tilted slightly to one side, as if it was still learning how to hold itself upright. I wanted to scream, but fear pinned me in place. "Claire," it said, voice smooth and quiet. "Where are you going?" I couldn't breathe. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. The thing took one step down, then another, its hand sliding along the railing. Its fingers were pale, thin, longer than they should have been. "Mark," I whispered. It smiled faintly. "Of course it's me." At that moment, I heard movement from behind the hallway closet. The door swung open, and the real Mark stumbled out, his face bruised, a cut along his cheek. "Claire, don't listen to it!" he shouted. The creature stopped mid-step. Its smile disappeared. For a second, both of them stood there. Same clothes, same height, same face. Only their eyes were different. One looked terrified. The other looked empty. The thing tilted its head again, then lunged toward me with a sound that wasn't human. Mark grabbed it before it reached me, and the two of them crashed into the floor. The sound of their struggle filled the house. Fists hitting walls, furniture breaking, the creature screeching in a pitch I didn't know a throat could make. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed a flashlight. When I shone it toward them, the creature hissed and jerked back, covering its face as if the light burned. Mark used the chance to shove it toward the stairs. "Get outside!" he yelled. I turned and ran into the front yard, the cold air stinging my lungs. Behind me, I heard one final crash, then silence. When I looked back, only one figure stepped out of the doorway, breathing heavily. It was Mark, his shirt torn, his eyes wide, his chest rising and falling. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "It's gone." But as he reached for my hand, I hesitated. For the first time in my life, I didn't know if the man standing in front of me was really my husband. His hand was warm, but something in his expression felt wrong. Too calm, too steady, like he'd practiced it. And when he smiled, I saw it. The faintest trace of that same unnatural twitch around the mouth. That was when I knew. Whatever had been under the bed hadn't left. It had simply found a better way to come out. The police said the house was clear. They said the thing that attacked Mark must have been a person, a deranged intruder hiding inside the walls, copying his voice somehow. But I knew they were wrong. No person could move like that, speak like that, or vanish into thin air when the light hit them. No person could survive what I saw happen on that bedroom floor. For a week after the attack, Mark and I stayed at my sister's house. Neither of us spoke much about what happened. The officers had questions, but our answers never satisfied them. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints other than ours, no footprints on the wet ground outside, even though it had been raining that night. The only thing they found was the message carved beneath the bed. "I'm not done yet." The first few nights at my sister Sophie's place, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whisper again. Mark's voice, from under the bed, saying, "Whoever's up there, that's not me." It played in my mind like a broken record. I'd wake up covered in sweat, heart pounding, scanning the shadows under the guest bed before daring to move. Mark tried to comfort me, but he was broken in his own way. He jumped at every noise, every creak of the floorboards. Sometimes I caught him staring at himself in the mirror too long, as if making sure his reflection was still his. By the end of the week, he told me he wanted to go back to the house. "Just to get closure," he said. "We can't keep running forever." I wanted to refuse, but part of me needed closure too. Maybe if I saw the house again in daylight, the fear would fade. Maybe it would finally feel like just a place, not a living thing that watched us breathe. So we went back on a Saturday morning. The air was still, unnaturally quiet. The moment we walked in, that same chill washed over me, like stepping into a place that remembered us. Everything looked the same, but it felt wrong, emptier, yet somehow aware. The walls seemed to hum faintly, a vibration I could feel deep in my chest. Mark went upstairs while I stayed in the living room. The silence stretched. Then I heard his footsteps above, slow and deliberate. "Everything looks normal," he called down. "It's fine, Claire." I didn't answer. Something about his voice sounded off, not exactly wrong, but too flat, like he was forcing calm. When he came back down, I noticed something strange. His shirt sleeve was torn, the same way it had been the night of the attack, but I'd thrown that shirt away. I was sure of it. "Where did you get that?" I asked quietly. He looked at me blankly. "What do you mean?" "The shirt. You threw it out." He paused, glanced down, then smiled faintly. I must have forgotten. That's when I realized I hadn't seen him pack that morning. He'd just appeared in the kitchen, ready to leave, already dressed. My pulse quickened. I took a slow step back toward the door. "Mark," I said carefully, "what happened upstairs?" He tilted his head, the same small, unnatural angle I'd seen before. "Nothing. Why do you look scared?" His tone was soft, but there was something hollow behind it, like he was testing the words, shaping them to fit. I wanted to believe it was him. I wanted to believe that the man standing in front of me was my husband, but deep down, I knew. I forced a shaky smile. "I'm just tired," I said. "Let's go home." He reached for my hand. "We are home." The warmth of his skin sent a chill through me. I looked into his eyes, and for a moment, I saw it. A flicker of something behind them, like two versions of him fighting for the same space. One real, one pretending. And when he blinked, only one remained. That night, we didn't go back to Sophie's. We stayed in a hotel. I barely slept, listening to his breathing beside me. Every few hours, it would stop for just a second too long, as if whoever he was needed to remember how to do it. Weeks passed. Life moved on, at least for everyone else. The police closed the case. Our friends stopped asking. Even Sophie said we should try to put it behind us. But some nights, when I'm alone and Mark is downstairs, I still hear it, the faint scratching from beneath the bed, the whisper that sounds too much like him saying my name. One evening, I came home early from work and found him sitting at the dining table, writing something in his notebook. When he saw me, he quickly closed it. I tried to laugh it off, teasing, "What are you hiding from me?" But his expression stayed blank. Later that night, when he went to shower, I opened the notebook. Every page was filled with one sentence, written over and over again in the same neat handwriting. "I'm still here." The ink was fresh. The last line wasn't finished. The pen was still wet. I haven't confronted him about it. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe he's trying to process what happened. Or maybe it isn't him anymore. All I know is that I lock the bedroom door every night now. I keep the lights on, and I never, ever look under the bed. Because whatever came into our home that night didn't just want to scare us. It wanted to replace us. And maybe, just maybe, it already did. So, if you're watching this, take my advice. When someone you love whispers something strange in the dark, believe them. Sometimes the truth hides right under your bed, waiting for you to laugh first. If you made it to the end, subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments, what would you do if your partner told you not to look under the bed tonight?